The 7900 XTX versus Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. All right, welcome back to these videos here. I'm Mr. MCP, and we're going to go ahead and test the 7900 XTX against Indiana Jones. This is quite a tough challenge for this GPU. My beloved 7900 XTX is probably not going to do very well here without needing some upscaling help just to get out the gate there, but we'll see if we can hit at least 60 FPS in this game. We're going to start this game test in the beginning of the game with the forest scene as it's the highest load on the system. We'll also hop to a Vatican scene where the performance will probably be a lot better. The game definitely has its very difficult scenes to run, such as the beginning of the game and then lighter scenes later on. So we'll give it a couple areas of test. We are running on a Windows 11 machine here. This is using the Intel Core i7-13700KF for the CPU. Again, the GPU is an AMD RX 7900 XTX, the Sapphire Pulse variant, and we have 64 gigs of memory installed on this system. So let's go ahead and check out the settings here. We're going to max out just about everything on the game here. Now, we are running a 4K monitor, so we're going to keep it at native resolution here at 4K. We want to test to see what we can do with this game with a 4K monitor and the GPU. With 4K, that's going to give us a lot more room to maneuver or flexibility with upscaling. With this larger number of pixels, we can more easily go down to more aggressive upscaling, such as balanced and even performance without having to worry too much about losing quality. But FSR, of course, has its own problems, so we'll see how that works out. Vertical sync is turned off. I wasn't sure if we needed to do this. I just set the FPS limit to 1000 just so in case it's applying something in the background, we're not going to get hit by that. Motion blur is low. Everything else is going to be pretty much maxed out or just about maxed out here. Again, we want to test the full power of this GPU. Later on, I might make some videos about backing some of these settings off to get a more favorable FPS, but for now, we'll keep it as such. We're going to keep this at full ray tracing. FSR, we're going to go ahead and turn off that for now and use native TAA. We'll try that. This is going to be running at native, no resolution scaling method of any sort here. We're just going to keep it at its base and see if the card can handle that load. I'm going to guess no, guys. Like, yeah, I've seen the reviews of this. It usually doesn't fare well for it. But we'll give it a try just to see how it goes. Also, we're not using Afterburner in this game because with this game, when I have Afterburner running, the game crashes. So we're using Steam's inlay performance counter there up at the top left area of the screen. We're already getting 7 FPS, so this doesn't look promising. We're just in the menu, guys, and it's already giving us 7 FPS. Yep. All right, so right off the bat, we can fairly easily say that this the 7900 XTX against Indiana Jones at native uh, resolution, no upscaling, has failed. It's not able to run the game. We're basically in screenshot mode here at 7 FPS. This is not ideal. This is pretty rough, guys. Looks beautiful, though. We don't even have, I don't think, vegetation fully turned on for ray tracing. So let's go ahead. So we can see that was pretty much a no-go, a fail for the 7900 XTX there. So we're going to go ahead and start using upscaling to see if it can help us out here. We're going to keep full ray tracing on. If FSR cannot help us out enough to get into any kind of usable frame rate, we'll go ahead and back that off. But for now, we'll keep it as is. And we're going to go to FSR, and we're going to go to quality. Okay, well, we've doubled our frame rates, guys. We've gone from 7 FPS to 14, 12 average right now. Yeah, that's not going to work. I mean, the game moves. I can actually move my mouse and the game responds, but no, that's just a no. So again, with FSR quality, we're going to go ahead and say that that's a fail. Let's go ahead and change some options here. Also, a thing of note here, the game this is a Vulkan game. So unfortunately, while the game supports FSR4, it does not support Optiscaler is not supported in this, so I can't implement FSR4 through Optiscaler into this game, which is sad because I think it would have been really good. So AMD, please get on that and release native support for FSR4 for RDNA 3 cards. This game definitely needs it. All right, so we're gonna go from quality here to balanced. Now balanced resolution is going to be a little bit above 1080p. I think it's like 1270 or something like that for internal scaling or internal rendering. And we are now at 16. Yeah, I well, still fail. I think at this point, I mean, we're going to keep going a little bit. We'll get a little bit more aggressive and see if there's anything else we can do. But I think at this point, we're going to go ahead and uh, eventually here back off path tracing as it's not handling it very well. Yeah, we're averaging about 16, well, yeah, 16 FPS. CPU, the Intel Core i7-13700KF, it's only at about 17% load. And then the GPU again, of course, as expected, is basically at max here. I'll say this much though, I'm not trying to move the mouse or walk or do anything else in the game. The game looks fantastic. All right, let's go back to settings again and move up our scaling. So again, we're at balance. Now we're going to go to performance. Now performance is going to be an internal rendering resolution of 1080p. And this is why I was saying that the 4K monitor was a necessity here, sorry, a necessity here. As with 4K, we have enough pixels to, I would say in most cases, and hopefully in this case as well, to render a game at 1080p internally and have enough to re-upscale it back to 4K because there's enough pixels to go ahead and do that. Okay, we're running at FSR performance now, and we're in the 20s, so slowly edging up there. The detail's pretty good. Looking to see if there's any shimmering, sizzle in the branches, leaves. The FSR implementation here looks pretty solid, at least when it comes to this jungle scene. Any screen tearing you might see, that's actually due to mostly the fact that the capture software is running at a different resolution or a different frame rate from the monitor, again, which this is a 4K 60 hertz monitor that I'm gaming on. Let's go ahead, but again, we're just in basically just barely hitting 20 FPS in the game. Significantly better than, it's about almost 3 times better than what we started with at 7, but still not getting to 60, right? So it's still a fail there. Let's see. They have ultra performance. What's the last setting? Native AA. That's not happening, guys. Yeah, that's okay. Let's do ultra performance. Now this would be typically, and probably in this case as well, ultra performance is going to give us an internal resolution rendering at 720p, and then re-upscaling it to 4K. Yeah, I want to say things are not looking as sharp anymore for sure. We're losing quite a bit of detail. There's quite a bit of blur, moving. There's quite a bit of blur. And again, we set motion blur just about to 0, so about as low as it'll go. I'm still not seeing any sizzling, flickering, shimmering, anything like that so far. Let's move a little farther in. We're in the FPS of mid to high 20s FPS. Yeah, that's not going to cut it in this particular scene. Now, again, this is one of the harder scenes to run in Indiana Jones. Um, and so you might be tempted to think that, well, okay, so once I'm past this scene, I can crank everything back up. But you never, there's going to be other scenes that are going to be just as hard to run as this one here. So you'd probably find yourself constantly flipping the upscaling methods around. Is this just shadow or is this just a weird way of, I guess, providing the shadow in there? Yeah, it's just not looking good. Not just FPF wise, but also it's not, it just doesn't look as sharp. Definitely seeing some strange rendering here as looking through these branches and walking past this tree. It kind of ripples. Okay, yeah. So even with FSR ultra performance, so internal rendering of 720p. Yep, nope, that's still not able to, it's not even really able to hit 30 at this point. We've got a 1% low of 20, well, it's an average of about 20, keeps changing. I say 27, 1% low of 30. CPU utilization with ultra performance is now up to 23%, but nothing too crazy. GPU is about 96 to 90%. Yeah, these I can tell just from looking at it, like these are the vegetation just isn't as sharp, nor the ground as sharp and clear and precise. You can see like at a distance there's just like in the center of the screen, there's not the little sparkles. Those are supposed to be bugs, I suppose, but just like there's weird ghosting or rendering issues or shimmer, I suppose, with that vegetation back there. It just doesn't look right. The shadows do not play right. Okay, let's see what else we can do here. So right now, again, we were playing this game at path traced, which is full ray tracing, path tracing. I mean, that is going to be the toughest for this game. Want it at high. All right, so we're going to go to path tracing at high. Ray traced shadows, only sunlight, ray traced reflections. Let's see, what does this mean? Ray traced shadows, yep, so that's fine. And again, let's, now that we are at path trace or ray traced high, instead of path tracing, full path tracing, we're now just high. Let's go ahead and see how that changes the scenario. Not for the better. So at quality, FSR quality, and path tracing, ray tracing set to high. We're 18, 19 FPS. Not ideal. What do we got to do to get to 60 on this game? All right, let's try some more settings. So we're going to go ahead and we're not going to use any kind of frame generation until we hit at least 60 FPS because that's just not going to work very well. The mouse already feels pretty bad. Okay, so now we're back to balanced. Again, we are at high for path tracing, full ray tracing. Okay. So balance is giving us into the mid 20s, or low 20s. That looks pretty good there. Not seeing anything too crazy, not too much of a difference. FPS did go up a bit, so that is good. Well, let's continue on then. So let's go ahead and take it from balanced to performance. So again, going to, at this point, 1080p internal resolution. Well, at least I saw a 30 there. I saw a 30 for a sec before it went back down. This game is not happy. This GPU is not happy with this game, I guess. I think still looks really good, and I've heard that even a low setting on this game is still a really good looking game. And again, also keep in mind that we are running this game maxed out right now. All right, let's go from performance to ultra performance, because we were just in the mid 20s there. Okay, so with ultra performance, we are at in the 30s now, about mid 30s, 35, 36. Gameplay feels significantly smoother, obviously. But again, it is, to my eye, it's noticeably less sharp of an image. And since it's rendering at 720p internally and upscaling that to 4K, yeah, you're going to lose some. That's a pretty aggressive upscaling. So the 7900 XTX, even with some upscaling here, still can't hit 60, but we did hit 30 with ultra performance. If you want to play it that way, there you go, but I know I probably would not. Let's see if there's some other options we can change here. Okay, so again, we're on ultra performance. We're gonna back that back down to quality and path tracing. We're gonna go ahead and put it at medium. We'll see if this is going to help. If not, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and turn it off, because after medium, when you turn it off, as a little helper method over there says, if you turn off, or if you set it to off, path tracing is disabled and only ray traced global illumination is used. So that will be our next step. All right, so we are now at path tracing medium, and we are in the 30s. So if you're looking for path tracing with this game and the 7900 XTX behind it, you can hit 30, it looks like, in a heavy area, a really hard to run area. You're going to get up into the 30s. Not up into the 30s, I'd say just at about 30. Um, it's really just skimming right there at the edge of 30, 31 sometimes, depending on number of shadows being drawn. And that is the biggest thing. There's a lot of shadows. I've lost my team. So that's going to be 30. This looks promising. So again, using path tracing, we're going to go ahead now and set quality to balanced. Okay, we're getting a little bit. Now we're basically comfortably above 30, but not into the mids. And again, still not even close to 60. Image still looks great. Again, not seeing any shimmering, sizzling. Let's check some of those branches up there. Yeah, it looks pretty good. System utilization here, we're pretty good. CPU's at 24% or so. GPU obviously 100%, 99%, whatever. That's always going to be like that in this game. And then frame rates, we're right around 35 or below. Push it a little harder. Medium path tracing, and we're going to go to performance. Okay, that's good. Now we're at 10. So again, 1080p here. Shadows look a little weird, but I think that's just shadows never look right completely. So 1080p internal resolution now, and depending on where you're looking, we're going to see mid to upper 30s. Let's not do the cutscene yet. Let's go back this direction. Rays of light look good. Yeah, pretty solid here at performance. We are in the mid 30s now. All right, let's go ahead and we'll go to ultra performance now. Again, that's probably not a setting we want to keep or use, but we'll just do it real quick to see where we land on that. Ultra performance is getting us into the 40s now. Let's see if that holds. Again, ultra performance is a 720p render resolution, internal render resolution, and holding into the low to mid 40s, but I am seeing obviously blurriness again. Vegetation is not quite as sharp, and like the colors just kind of run together, so not quite as defined. Especially like there, like that just looks like a green mess. They do not look like individual leaves, and it certainly did with the less aggressive upscaling methods. So again, ultra performance, probably not what you want to go with, and it's not getting us to 60 either. All right, let's go ahead and get off of path tracing, and we're going to go to just regular ray trace. Oops, not audio. Okay, so now we are using, by setting it to off, path tracing is now disabled, and we are just using ray trace global illumination. Vegetation animation quality is high. Let's go ahead and back off the upscaler, back to quality again. All right, well now that is a night and day. That is night and day difference, guys. This is high refresh rate territory. Game looks and feels good. Ray tracing at this point is significantly reduced though, of course, right? So, but we are hitting over 100 FPS consistently. CPU load though is at 50%. We're going to go ahead and make the change from going to quality with FSR. We're just going to go take FSR to native AA. So this is going to be using FSR's anti-aliasing instead of the TSR anti-aliasing. Still very smooth. We're in the very high 60s. I saw 70 when we first started there. GPU utilization 100% at times. CPU utilization at this point is back down to about 32%, 36%. CPU again is the 13i700, i13700K, KF. Yeah, and this vegetation now looks perfect. But again, as I was saying, now we're running just native AA at this point, and the ray tracing is limited to global illumination. So not path trace, so you're not going to get individual lighting and shadow effects from every single item here. So it's a little less, I guess you say, pop with the shadows, right? When you're in the shady areas, these individual blades don't have their own shadows, right? Um, but they are clear and sharp. And again, we're in the high 60s, just barely below 70. And again, this is FSR native AA. So no upscaling at all. So this would be a great way, I would say, to play this game because after you complete this scene, and once we're at a happy point, we'll go and hop into the Vatican area that I've been in, and we'll just quickly take a look and see how performance is there. With my experience, though, that performance was about 50% lighter than it is in this area, this initial starting area. We'll go ahead now as a final step. Um, Again, we saw over 100 FPS with ray tracing, with native AA, or not with just ray tracing, but with quality upscaling, FSR quality. that was giving us well over 100, even 120 and higher. So that was great. We're going with native AA, and let's see if frame generation is going to help us in this case. Okay, so we've gone from the 60s to 100. A little bit of the mouse feels fine. This isn't a fast-paced game. There's a lot of like mystery solving in this game, talking to people and things like that. So you're not going, even if there was high latency, I don't think you would find, I don't think most people playing this game would find that problematic unless you're sensitive to that. But this feels great. And again, we're at, look, right now we're 110. CPU load is at 30%, and GPU is where we would expect it to be 97, 98%, 99%, right? So looks great. And again, this is ray tracing, only limited ray tracing in the game, so significantly lighter load. So we did back off from path tracing. Path tracing is just it's a very hard technology to run on a 7900 XTX here, any AMD GPU really. By the way, I know a lot of people, of course, the big thing with this game was memory utilization, right? So cards with 8 gigs of VRAM or even 12 gigs of VRAM are having issues running it. The 7900 XTX has 24 gigs, of course, and we are currently utilizing 18, almost 19 gigs of that 24 gigs. RAM, we're also using about 20 gigs of memory. So that would explain why a lot of 8 gig and 12 gig cards were not happy with this game. All right, so this is going to be the Vatican here. And we'll load that and see how it works. Again, this area that we're loading now is very, very much different from the high vegetation area. Oh yeah, definitely a big change. FPS is now 128, 130. Let's go outside. Again, so this is frame generation and native AA with ray tracing only. Not seeing any issues. But let's see how path tracing might change things, right, with the way shadows fall. Uh, I'm going to do this to see, because, what if you decide that, well, that beginning scene in the movie, I'm probably not going to run into a lot of those scenes. I'm willing to deal with, FPS in the low 30s, even high 20s. Let's go ahead and enable path tracing again, and then we'll call a verdict here after that. All right, we've put path tracing at high. And we have FSR on with native AA initially. Yeah, that's definitely a difference. You can see a lot more because again now the light coming from certain sources is able to fill out, bounce off surfaces, light them up. This was all really dark and just flat, as I had mentioned in the vegetation area in the jungle, right? The shadows were there, but objects in shadow were not casting their own shadows. They were not reflecting their own light. It was all kind of global, which makes sense. It's called global illumination, right? So this is much different. And again, with native AA, we are in the 50s. Feels smooth. CPU utilization in the 30s. GPU doesn't even have to be set. Of course, it's going to be basically 100. Let's go across to this other side. Movement is great. Yeah, so again with path tracing, maybe you'll decide that you're willing to take you'll deal with a little bit lower FPS, or maybe fiddle with the settings in those areas to adjust it. Let's go ahead and video, thank you. Let's put this back to path tracing, full ray tracing path tracing. Okay, so Slight tweak in the colors, definitely more, a lot more in the way of detail in the shadows. Specific areas are shadowed themselves. You can see the quality of this barrel has changed, at least from what I was seeing before. Much more detail in the shadows. But we are now in the 40s, 50s, 30s. Obviously, it's going to be a lot more of a load, but let's, again, we're still at native AA, so we're not even doing any kind of upscaling at the moment. Native AA, and let's go to quality. Okay, now in the 70s. And again, frame generation is still on as well. I have not turned that off yet, so this is with the benefit of frame generation. But it looks good. I'm not seeing any sizzling. I'm not seeing any shimmering. No real artifacting of any kind, but we are at balanced. And we're comfortably above 60. That looks pretty good. The whole game looks really good. I will do one last test here, and that's going to be to go to performance. Again, with frame generation still on, we're going to go from quality to, I'm sorry, not performance, but balanced. So it's going to be just above 1080p resolution, internal rendering resolution. And now we are basically just sitting above 70 now. We're not dipping into the 60s anymore. Vegetation does not look as sharp, surprisingly. It still looks great, mind you, but I am noticing a little bit less definition less pop in these leaves. All right, so I think we can finish testing there. At this point, we're getting, looking at the sky, you're going to get pretty high frame rates, but we're basically getting about 80 FPS on average here now with FSR. And that's for frame generation. As the one thing that's nice about the Steam inlay there is at the top you see FSR is with frame generation. FSR frame generation, we're getting 83, 84 FPS. The actual base FPS though is in the 40s, so frame generation is doubling that for us effectively, and that's giving us our 80, 84, 86 FPS. So that's interesting to see. As far as the GPU goes, again, pretty highly utilized, but the CPU is sitting about 40%. GPU RAM in this scene is GPU memory is 21 gigs, so that's getting close to maxing out even 24 gigs of this GPU. That's insane. But again, we are running at this point full ray tracing and path tracing enabled with FSR balanced at this point enabled and frame generation. I think it's a pretty good combination here. Okay, but what is the verdict? Well, native, the verdict is no. The 7900 XT cannot play this game effectively at native with path tracing. With ray tracing, you're going to get closer to a more playable game, but unless you're happy with mid 20s to 30 FPS, that is just not going to be where you want to be. So I would say at this point that the 7900 XTX got defeated by this game at native. However, moving into the higher upscaling modes, the more aggressive upscalings, you do start to see yourself sitting in the 30s and 40s even. And then once we backed off the path tracing to medium, we were well into the 40s and so forth. And then and with path tracing turned off and only ray tracing turned on, which still made the game look good, but with just ray tracing, we were seeing FPS over 60 and 70s. And then with frame generation, it was really pumping it up over there to well over 100 FPS. And anything but that jungle area, the game is a little bit more forgiving. We were able to turn path tracing back on, and we were also with FSR set to balanced and frame generation enabled, we're able to get ourselves comfortably above 80 or comfortably above 70 to 80. If you got a high refresh rate monitor, you may be looking to game on this at 120 hertz. Yeah, you're probably going to have to go extremely aggressive here and probably even back off from path tracing to just ray tracing. But as we saw, like in this example here, when you turn off path tracing, these dark areas, which you do run into often in this game, just becomes a typical flat dark scene. You do not see these reflective surfaces kind of casting and reflecting their own texture of light, which is really immersive, really helps the game to be more immersive. So in that respect, with heavy FSR use or mid to heavy FSR use and path tracing back down a little bit, we are able to get more than enough FPS to play this game. So that would be a win. So this is kind of a 50-50. Native, no. With FSR and in non-jungle-y areas, it's a win. I hope you guys like this video. Let me know if you have any questions or suggestions on these or other videos, and any criticism is also accepted. Feel free to comment below, like and subscribe if you want to see more of these videos, and we'll see you next time. This is Mr. MCP signing out. See you guys later.